Okay, it's Friday, October 14th. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap. You can see here today on Friday, after a big green day yesterday, outside bar broadening higher to the upside, we end up with a red bar today that closed near the middle of yesterday's range. We did technically move above the high of yesterday's bar, which when you see a green bar like this, you do expect the high to be tested. The question is always whether you get continuation or failure, and that's kind of where you look at opening price action in the pre-market range to judge that. And in this case, coming into today, you broadened up on a very small sample size, in terms of broadening up, and then I'll show you in a second the way you kind of reached a potential target area as well in this gap, that it was possible that you would not have continuation. That it was really, as I said in the pre-open video, there wasn't an actionable signal today on the daily chart. Anytime you have this broadening action, whether it's a one day or whether it's over the course of a bigger picture, once you broaden out, you don't know if you're going to get continuation or a potential reversal. Anyway, that's where you go to the opening price action pre-market range. When I was shooting the pre-market video, the range was here. It kind of popped up in the last hour before trading all the way up to this level. So that became your pre-open range when price started. And right out of the gates, you had the big red bar to the downside, which followed through. So technically, the only trade to consider if you wanted to do it was a short trade here. You'd have your stop at the midway point of that bar. That's the way I always kind of trade. And in this case, knowing it was a downside follow through in sort of an up condition, because you're still above the midpoint of yesterday, according to my methodology, you start to target just the little pivot you see along the way. So there was one here and then the pre-market lows, and we kind of shot right through there, and it ended up being a classic directional day where you had one push down, pause, second push down, and then it kind of paused and grinded to the end. I had discussed in a midday video or a morning video how I thought it would kind of, if it was going to come down like this, kind of hold in this range. This is a fair value gap right in here, and that's really all price went to. So I was talking about if you did go short here, this would be kind of a targeted area in some form, and it ended up getting there and it closed red. So it was pretty clear-cut day in terms of trading. If you didn't want to do anything because you felt like it was a green day and you're above the midpoint, you just didn't want to play that potential exhaustion up here after just one day, then you would have just not traded at all, but you wouldn't have gotten hurt because there was no buy signals early on. But definitely the opening signal was to sell if you wanted to do it, given that, a lot of times I like to have the continuity of selling after kind of a red bar being below the midpoint of a prior day. But anyway, that was the signal. And again, the reason you had some justification was A, you had broadening action on this bar by itself, and B, this opening price right here did go into the gap area. So that's an area always of potential exhaustion too, or a target area where things could reverse. So it was the opening price action really that always guides you. That's kind of where my methodology always kind of is the final kind of decision, as to what to really do on a day. So in other words, coming into tomorrow, I'm seeing a big red bar. I expect a little follow through lower. When I look at the charts overall, if we get a 2-down day tomorrow, on Monday, do I really expect it to reach its target here, given you had such powerful buying? I'm a little, I don't know for sure, but if we get some kind of sell, I'll kind of know I'm coming into an area which could really bring in a lot of buying, and maybe I'd have to take a small loss. It all depends where opening price action is in the pre-market range, of course, but I could see price here kind of holding in this area, or maybe making a little push down just to get below this red bar, but then holding and maybe starting up. But there's no actionable signal, and we'll just see, where we are relative to the midpoint of that day going forward. My point is, I don't see anything clear that, I'll play a downside 2 down and see if we hit this target and head towards bigger picture targets, because basically the weekly chart is now red again, although it's kind of a neutral looking red bar. So I don't have a clear cut until we really, start above or below the midpoint of this bar and, either get a 2-up week or in this case, a continuation lower. It's hard to, I'll stick with the downside if we have it because it's red, and the monthly chart is now red again. It turned green yesterday for one day. So you'll stick with the downside, but then you got to be very, just knowing there's such powerful buying here, you just want to see how, if you get some kind of a sell on Monday, you'll watch opening price action, how it reacts to that, and not be surprised if it somehow, meets with a little buying here, and maybe we start some reversal up. We're still possibly in a position here from that broadening out lower here on yesterday and starting up strong. Even though we pulled back a little bit today, I see more of a consolidation. We can still end up, if we do start up and then kind of take out a 2-up week, then we will be broadening out likely to the top of, the 2 weeks ago and maybe to the top of this broadening formation. So we'll keep that in mind. But it's not clear what's going to happen on Monday. So we'll just have to watch opening price action as always and the pre-market range and let that guide us. But today it was a pretty clear day in terms of what you need. The only real option you had was to sell. And then once you saw a big down move, my thing is the first move of the day and then a secondary move of the day. So you had both of that pretty clearly if you wanted to take advantage of that. I was actually away most of the day, so I couldn't trade, but that's kind of what developed. So we'll see what happens Monday. And again, the continuity, at least for the moment, is to the downside with everything being red, but a little trickier in terms of the fact that there's no real actionable signals at the moment. We'll see something develop as time goes on. And again, we'll watch. This is why, that opening 15-minute bar and the pre-market range and, either being below that to have downside probability or to be above the pre-market range to have upside, likelihood. That's where we always look for as well. And that kind of is the final piece, to this puzzle. So this puzzle's a little unclear in terms of what happens next, but we'll see what happens next week.